become proficient on and off the field so they can dominate in everyday life. Today is episode 124, 124. We're joined by a very special guest, very own Sean Riggins. I said Sean Riggins. He is the king of catching, former Major League
Yes,
Baseball
sir.
catcher for Tampa Bay Rays organization, and also a 2008 World Series participant. This episode is brought to you by YouGoin'Pro publisher, YGP publisher. If you're serious about becoming a player and truly want to get to the next level, you need to get a copy of my new book. It's Are You Really D1? This book will help you understand what college coaches are looking for and scouts, and actually what to be a complete baseball player on and off the field and also in your classroom, and also build characters. So go to RUD1, that's AREYOUD1.com. So stop guessing and start preparing to be like a D1 baseball player. Hey, this episode is we're gonna get right to it, Coach. I call you Coach as well because you coach a lot of kids as well, and I want to ask you some questions based on some stuff that a lot of kids really don't know, Sean. And I want to first of all say thank you for coming on, man. Thank you very, very much, Sean. Let's go back to your draft day when you were drafted. What was that moment like? If you could teach the older Sean how to prepare for meetings and opportunities, what would you tell yourself today to prepare the audience?
Well, I'm going to be honest. My story is much different than most into professional baseball and even into college. So,
Okay.
I never recorded a single hit in high school. And I sat the
What?
bench in high school my entire 4 years at St. Thomas Aquinas. And I was fortunate enough, I was a super late bloomer. I was fortunate enough to walk on at FIU my freshman year, where I took a red shirt. Roughly, after a year and a half there, I transferred out to Indian River.
Okay.
I had a very, very good red shirt freshman year at Indian River. I hit 400 and I caught a bunch of games.
400.
And the draft day, our team, we were messing with guys before, telling them, that we were gonna prank call them and stuff like that for the draft, messing around with people. And so I was laying actually in my parents' room back at home in Southwest Ranches, and the phone rang, and so it was Kevin Elfring. He's still a scout for the Rays today, and he was like, "We want to let you know that you were drafted in the 24th round." And so I thought it was the guys messing with me. So I hung the phone right back up. So I'm like, hell no. I'm like, this can't be true. So I hung the phone up, you know? And then he called me right back and he's like, no, listen, don't hang up the phone. This isn't anybody messing with you. He's like, no, this is for real. And
Oh,
so,
that's
we got
funny.
to laughing, and we actually, we talked a little bit about the process. When I was drafted, we still had draft and follows.
Okay.
So I threw a number out at him that it would take to sign me that year. They weren't gonna fulfill that, so I was able to go back to Indian River for one more year. I bet on myself, and
Okay.
then I told him I go back and play well. I was like, this is the number that I expect. And so, I went through. I had another really, really good sophomore year,
Thank God.
and I signed after my sophomore year. I didn't have to go back into the draft because they have your rights up
Oh.
about a week before the draft.
Ah.
So, Coach, telling guys or talking to guys about preparing themselves for this, the number one thing that I see today that is the difference maker, it's the guys who are regimen.
Mm.
The players that have a regimen, when they break off and they go to college, the college coaches don't have to worry about these guys because they've been already doing this, now for years,
Correct.
where they have a system and they stick to that regimen. So there's so many good players nowadays that to me they just don't get the looks that other guys get because the lack of a regimen. They
Mm.
they're unpredictable. The coaches don't know what they're gonna get when they get that athlete,
Okay.
and what they when a team or a college is giving you 500 grand
Right.
for a 4 year scholarship,
Mm-hmm.
they want to make sure that they know exactly what they have. Good parents, guys that don't cause problems off the field, a kid that doesn't mind getting up early,
Mm.
staying late. These little intangibles
Tangibles, right?
are really a difference maker. Nowadays, everybody, it's a dime a dozen. There's great players everywhere at every single position,
Right.
but what is going to separate you from where
Mm.
you are and somebody else, in my opinion, is that consistent regimen where
Mm.
you're up and you're doing what you need to do without being told or prompted to all the
Mm.
time. And those guys are really the ones that are going to end up winning at the end of the day.
Mm, I like that, Sean. I didn't know that you got a. I like your way you went got into the draft because I would have never thought that. I mean, I know you went to St. Thomas, but
Yeah.
I'm thinking, wait a minute, basically you just you were a walk on. You basically was a walk on. I'm gonna
Yep.
make it. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna make it happen, and it just happened, man. But congratulations, you moved on. You're doing some great things as well. King of Catchers. I love that name. We'll talk about that later, but I love that name.
Right.
King of Catchers. I like that, which leads me to the next question. For catchers trying to get to the D1 or pro level, what are the non-negotiables you think that they should think about beyond their offense, beyond hitting the ball when you're talking about catching?
You, Coach, nowadays there's parameters that are set for each position really, and we see an incredible skill set on a lot of these kids now, even at the youth ages. You see these
Yeah.
kids 13, 14 years old with the velocity, around 80 miles an hour. The pop times are super low. So, there are benchmarks that, you need to, you got to be close. Throwing 80 miles an hour is going to help you stand out from behind the plate. If you're
Right.
over 80, you're really going to stand out. The pop time nowadays, back in the day, we would always talk about a two pop time.
Right.
Now,
Right.
you got to have that pop time in game, 195 or lower.
Hmm.
In a setting that's a showcase or a workout tryout, you want to see it even below that.
Right.
Um, and that now too with the athletes, you want to see the guy be able to run a little bit as well. Back when I was playing,
Me too.
catchers running the 60,
Me
that
too.
was like, yeah, it just wasn't that big of a deal.
Deal. Right.
But now, if you go out there and you run an 8.560, you better have some incredible
Incredible.
skills behind the plate and be able to hit the ball a mile, because
That's
that's
right.
just where the game has become so, in that position has really become an athletic guy. Look at these
Mm.
guys that are playing now in the big leagues, besides a few of them, and,
Right.
and you have really, really good athletes back there.
Yeah.
And the position has changed,
Right.
but there are benchmarks. If you're looking to go and play D1 and beyond, the arm has to be there. You got to be an 80 plus arm. You have to be, below 195 on the pop in game
Mm.
to really stand out. And you got to receive well. The receiving
Right.
now it's really, really been highlighted, and there's a lot of good things that are happening with the receiving. I like all the one knee stuff.
Yeah.
So, it really looks pretty, and a lot of these guys, they're good at stealing pitches.
Yeah.
Some people hate it. I love it.
But hey, you already answered the second question for us pop top, so I'm not going to even go there. I'm
Yeah.
going straight to the next one, blocking. So blocking is often the
Yeah.
difference between staying on the field and sitting the bench, for the most part, because you want to prevent runs, prevent fast
Right.
balls. So what separates elite blockers from an average one, would you say? Because you're a catcher.
So, and now with the one knee down, I truly believe that the blocking is easier. What happens is that guys, their setup is poor on that with the one knee down. Their setup is poor, and so they don't have a lot of success with it. And then what happens is that your coach or your manager is telling you, hey, get off one knee,
Right, right,
right?
right, right,
Well, the one knee isn't hurting the athlete. What's happened? The setup is hurting the guy, and does the guy have the mobility to actually do it? Everybody's a little bit different. But I'm going to tell you right now, I have kids that we train that are 9 years old that can block as good off one knee as they can in a traditional two, the
Really?
traditional setup. So it drives me crazy to hear people say, "Oh, the one knee down is what's killing them." The
Mm.
guy can't move up on 2 feet. So the one knee down isn't killing him. It's
Right.
it's the setup.
Right.
And if you think about it, for the older guys, for instance,
Right.
let's just take somebody like myself. If I'm on the back end of my career, right, and I've been catching traditional setup the entire time, well, I got millions of repetitions blocking the ball one way. If you come and tell me, all right, start doing it like this, yeah, there might be a little bit
Pushback.
of lag
Right.
until I really, really pick it up,
Mm-hmm.
but you just don't have the amount of reps.
Right.
I have a kid helping me now. His name Tanner Smith. He's with the Braves, and when he came in, they told him, "Hey, listen, you're catching one knee down all the time." And this is like one of my arguments with so many people that tell kids to get off one knee
Okay.
is they do it in the big leagues all the time. They
Right.
rather you get one more strike than hey, you might miss a ball. You might miss a block that you could possibly get from a traditional setup, but they rather you get more strikes. And that's the reason why everybody's doing it. And there's data behind it. So
Mm.
it's a very tough argument. There's so many catching experts out there that have never caught. They just look at it from their subjective views and they're like, "Oh, the one knee is terrible." But everybody would not be doing it in the big leagues if it's not good. If it's not the best thing,
Right.
they would go away from it. I promise.
Right.
You know?
You're right. You're right. That makes sense what you're saying, Sean. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
For the people just coming on, this is episode 124. We got very own Sean Riggins, play for the Tampa Bay Rays, and we're talking about catching. So my next question to you is this: catchers control the tempo of the game, which you know that. How important is
Right.
managing the running game for pitchers and also for defensive communication on the next level? Because that's something that high schoolers don't do very well, is control the tempo of the game and manage the running game. I didn't say control it, but manage it.
Right.
So can you elaborate on that?
Well, that all comes back to everything in the youth level, coach.
Okay.
What happens is after every single pitch, these kids are staring into the dugout for all the signs, for everything. And at the youth level, which I don't understand at all, there's no pitch clock. There, you could sit there and it could take 2, 3 minutes in between pitches, but the kids are so reliant on the coach. And
Correct.
so the coach is there feeding them all this information. Well, as you grow and you get older, the coaches need you to think independently out there. And that has been removed from these kids. And the coaches are so worried about their win and loss record at the youth level that they want to call all the pitches. It's all me. Well, that's not realistic. And as you get older, these college coaches are looking for guys that can think independently, that aren't just going to sit there and shake their head yes to everything that you tell them, that they're going to have a good educated conversation back and forth about what's going on. And that is the biggest problem now. I see it because we have a 9U team for my little guy, and I see these coaches. Everybody wants to call the pitches all the time, and it's all about the coach calling the pitch, and that's where it starts. And so the kids are brainwashed with that, and they're just looking in the dugout for everything. And so being able to control that running game that's one part of it. But also, now you have these pitchers, with everybody throwing this super high velocity, you have the pitchers that are doing a super high leg kick. They're 2 seconds to the plate. Well, you're not.
Mm-hmm.
You got
You,
okay. You
you're
got me
good.
there.
You're good. You're good.
You're not gonna be able to throw anybody out if you're consistently releasing the ball at 2 seconds.
Right.
So the pitchers have lost the ability to hold runners. They're super slow to the plate, and to me, the Blue Jays are where the start of the change of baseball back to people running a little bit more. Their pitchers holding guys on better. They did a fantastic job of that. Those guys stole bases, because it's a huge part of the game. With this pitching now, coach, everybody's throwing 100 miles an hour. Runs are very, very tough to come by. So if I can get a guy on first, and next thing you know, he's on third because you can't hold him on and your catcher can't throw anybody out, well, I'm going to start beating you. The teams that don't have all the home run hitters, they're going to start beating you playing station to station baseball because you're not going to score off these guys throwing 100 with good off speed stuff. You're not going to score on them all the time. It's just not going to happen.
I liked what you said. That's pretty good, which leads me to the next question because you have experience. My question to you is, with your experience, how does catchers earn trust from their pitchers, their coach, and the entire team?
Well, that comes from one thing, coach. That comes from doing your homework. Catching at a higher level, even the guys in high school, these high school guys, college guys, and into the pros, you start to see you play against the same guys all the time. You're playing against
Right.
the same teams.
Right.
So you doing your homework and knowing, hey, this guy likes to swing the bat early. We can put this guy away late with certain pitches. And you starting to formulate a game plan and talking to the pitchers,
I like that.
that's what gets their trust. And them seeing you do the homework. You just going out there and trying to wing it all the time, that doesn't fly.
That's right.
In the big leagues, you have people that track everything, right?
Correct.
And even with that, before every series, you sit down and have a pitcher and catcher meeting on how you're going to attack certain hitters. And that's super important. Like that, you have to absorb all that. Myself, I was a backup catcher for most of the time, especially in the big leagues. Well, for me, that was even more important because a lot of the times I'm coming in at the end of the game in crunch time. I'm only catching once every 3 or 4 days. So you have to be up on top of it. You got to do your homework. You got to get in there, watch video of the other team. How can we put these guys away? And that starts too in high school.
Yes.
But the problem, like I said, the problem comes from these coaches wanting to do everything
Everything.
for the kid. So you know what I mean? They're calling a fastball away, but the pitch was actually inside and he blew it by him. Well, the guy calls fastball away again. He hits it 500 feet, and now he's mad at the catcher and pitcher. It's because you can't think independently.
Correct.
So it starts at a young age,
Okay.
but this is where most guys are behind. And you'll see the guys that get into the big leagues or the guys that are in college that are really, really make their mark. They're another coach on the field.
Yeah.
And that starts at a younger age. The coach
Yes.
is allowing them a little bit of freedom.
I like that. I mean, I totally agree with you because I coach as well, and I don't like calling pitches. I just don't like
Right.
calling pitches. I let them play because
Right.
they don't. They have to be independent on themselves to understand how to deal with issues. I can't tell you everything
I
because
agree.
life is going to kick you in the butt. The question is, as you know, and the Bible says you fall 7 times. What are you going to do the last time when I don't say a word? What are you going to do? You got to be able to think on your own. How do you deal with conflict? How do you deal with conflict? And baseball is a great teacher of that. I want to talk about
Right.
the organization with the Rays. You play with the Rays, and I like your role. Your role is very, very important. You have to be on
Mhm.
your point. What stood out about your experience and your approach to your player development?
You know, that's a great question. So when the Tampa Bay Rays, first off, are an incredible organization. Their player development is incredible. You can see every year that these guys have people that are near the top of baseball. And in the top 100, the Rays have so many prospects up there, and that comes from their player development. Um, it Getting to know the player when you're at the professional ranks, these coaches and instructors that actually get to know you, those are the guys that will end up making an impact. We had Steve Henderson, who was our hitting guy, our roving hitting instructor. Skeeter Barnes, he was our outfield coordinator and base running guy. We had Mike Compton, who was our catching guy, along with Jamie Nelson. And our pitching guy, we had Dick Bosman, who is a old time guy. We had Jimmy Hoff, rest in peace. Jimmy was
Yes.
he was incredible. But these guys would sit down and get to know you. it wasn't just, catching balls and fielding balls. It was them knowing things actually about the athlete. They knew about your family. They invite your family to come and do things with the organization. And that truly was the true experience for player development. We were going to
Okay.
get you're going to get the reps with whatever organization you're with. You're
Okay.
going to get reps. You're as a catcher, coach, you're there at 6 o'clock in the morning and you're leaving at 6 o'clock at night. The reps are going to come, but it's the that you feel like you have somebody that you can actually turn to. And
Right.
remember, coach, at the professional level, you're either going to make it happen or you're not. There's no, oh, this guy's favored, this guy. Yeah, the guys who got big signing bonus, they are favored. They're going to get more opportunities than
Right.
others, but you're either going to get it done or not. So the Rays, truthfully, they made the last guy on the roster feel like the number 3 hitter, and that's the culture over there, and that is why those guys will compete even with a much lower
Sure. Yeah.
with the salary. Those guys are going to compete every year, and people that go there from other organizations, they love it. It doesn't matter if they're a 10-year vet or they're a rookie coming into the big leagues. The culture there breeds that, and that's why that's a winning organization, man.
Wow.
And we had Andrew Friedman as our GM, who is, arguably probably the number one
Yeah.
general manager in baseball right now. And
Yeah.
we had Joe Madden teamed up with him, who Joe
Oh,
was
Joe. Joe was cool.
just, oh, Joe is the man. And another guy who got to know you. You know what I mean?
Mm.
It wasn't just about ball,
I like that.
So
Man, that's good. I didn't know
yeah,
that. I just hope they get a new field, new stadium soon. I mean, I know they're building one.
yeah.
I hope it stays in
I'll tell you
St.
what,
Pete.
man, the Trop ain't all that bad, bro. The Trop ain't bad. Your game's gonna start on time. You got nice air conditioning. Obviously you got no fans.
Right.
It's sad, but
Yeah.
they need to get that whole deal over into Tampa, near where like the Lightning play. The Lightning, they sell their stadium out for hockey every night.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
got a little change of scenery. I think would be good, but I like the dome.
I like the dome too. You think they're gonna get the dome back? You think they're gonna make it happen or
Yeah,
what?
I think they should be up and running at the start of next year.
Next year?
Like I said, still going to be empty, but
Yeah. Okay.
you can't do anything about that. Money
Yeah.
talks in that
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
whole
You're
line of
right.
work.
You're right. You're right. I got a few more questions because we're gonna end it up in a few seconds. We got about five
Yep.
more minutes. Coach, I got a question about catching. Catching has a mental demand. It's just mentally, you got to be ready
Right.
mentally. So being as a catcher, how do you handle the pressure, the failures, the grind on your long season at every level? What can you tell the listeners about the mental demand and handling pressure and failure?
That is a great question, and that really at the higher levels, coach, that's what this is about. Can you mentally, hold up for 162 games, and how do you overcome your mistakes? And I'll tell you, like I told you earlier, my situation was much different than most. I was told literally up until I walked into FIU that I wasn't good enough. I was too this. You're not going to be able to do this. You're too slow. So my entire career up until that point was literally, it was negative. It was a lot of negative stuff, except for like playing with my dad. My dad coaching me. My youth years were fantastic. My dad was an incredible, mentor for me, and my dad was an Army Ranger, which
Okay,
really really helped
that
with
helps.
our mental,
Mental,
with
yeah.
exactly. Um, but being on the bottom for myself and not having a lot of success, I was, not that I was okay with making mistakes, but I knew at the end of the day, it really wasn't that big of a deal.
Hmm.
For some of these kids that are their number one guy on their team, they're the number one guy at their college, and they're a high draft pick. When some of these guys finally start to hit a little bit of resistance,
Hmm.
things start to fall apart. And when some of these guys get away from their families, myself, I grew up here in South Florida. we're exposed to incredible nightlife. There's a lot of things going on around us. So growing up and being around that, it wasn't that big of a deal for me once I went out on my own. Some of these kids, though, they grow up in small towns. All of a sudden now the lights come on.
Mm,
They're out hanging out at these much cooler places. The temptations to go and do other things are there. So, and you going out at night, not getting your proper rest. Um, you know, for some people, they're going out to these bars and these clubs and they're staying out all night. Well, all of that really, really affects your mind. And then once the self doubt starts to set in,
ooh,
it's very, very hard to turn that back. So to me, it starts, like I said, it starts at a young age,
yes.
and understanding how to deal with failure,
Right.
which is very, very difficult in this sport because, and especially as a catcher, the catcher has the ball in his hands more than anybody. So there's going to be mistakes are going to be made, but you know, being able to position yourself to where that's not going to affect you all the time,
Hmm.
it's very, very difficult. And that's why, nowadays you see so many good mental coaches out there. These guys have their hands full,
Yes.
and think about it now, coach. Everything that these kids do, starting off at 10 years old, even 11 years old, perfect game and all this, they're highlighted. There's nowhere to hide now. So you're playing good your whole life. Now all of a sudden you hit some resistance. Well, it's like a reset, and then you come back, you bounce back from that. When you go through your first real slump of a 0 for 30, how are you going to react? Are you going to pack it in, or are you going to
Mm,
dig in?
right. Right. Right.
A lot of these kids haven't gone through a real slump until they get into high level college ball or Division 1 ball or pro ball. So, and that's truthfully what's going to separate the guys that are going to
Yeah.
make it from the others. It's not always the guy with the best skill set.
Man, this is good. Man, you given you've given so much great information. I'm like, man, this guy is like
Yeah, man.
you giving it in. I
But
like it.
but
Go ahead, Sean.
but coach, it just truly starts. It starts at the young ages, but what you do off that field is, and who you hang out with is is very important. You know what I mean? Everybody nowadays, remember, has a cell phone, and that cell phone's running. Oh, here's so and so
Right,
acting
right,
out,
right,
and
right,
here's so and so out at the club at 2 o'clock in the morning drinking. It's just it, people want people want to say, "I told you he wasn't gonna make it." That's what
right.
these kids have to understand. They might have one or two people in their corner, but everybody else wants to see them not make it.
That's right.
And it's much easier for an organization or a coach to cut you and let you go than to continue to push you.
Yeah,
So, and it because it makes their job easier.
yeah,
If I had 25 angels on my team that were all first round, that's going to be tough. It's going to be
right,
tough. But
right.
guys separate themselves by the things that they do most of the time off the field, which affects their on-field
Yeah.
play and makes my job as an organization that much easier.
Hey, but I got one last question. And
So,
you packing it in, brother. I appreciate it. It's episode 124. We got Sean Riggins, former Tampa Bay Rays player, and also he's the king of catching. Last question, and I'm gonna
yes,
let you
sir.
close it out. Is how important is faith, family, and having a vision for your future before your career is over? Can you give us some advice for these young players? Faith, family, and your future. How would you prioritize that?
So, growing up, our parents, they put us in Catholic school. Um, Whether you're in a faith-based school or not, it just, to me, it creates a culture that, family is super important. You have, your home away from home, which is your church, which is, and you can go there and just know that you're not being judged outside of your family.
Right.
Um, you see the same consistent people, and this helps you formulate a team, like I said, outside of just your immediate family. So for us growing up, that was something that was super important. You only have a couple people that you can turn to and rely on,
That's right.
but you know your church, your family, it's really really important, and it just gives you a little bit more guidance
Right.
through this whole process.
That's right.
And most guys, they end up finding their way once they start to hit a little bit of resistance,
Yeah.
because once you hit some resistance, then it's like, uh-oh, you know, you start hitting the panic button, and sometimes that's a little too late, you know. So it, I'm not saying that you have to go to church every single day, you have to, you know, be, you know, understand every verse in the Bible, but having something that you can turn to that brings you peace on a daily basis, it's hard to find. And that to me really is what, you know, your Christianity will do for you, and having a good solid family at home to help you, you know.
Man, that's good, man. I appreciate that, Sean. The king of catching, Sean Riggins. Coach, can you give out your social media so they can go ahead? I can close it out because you got to go and the show is almost over. If you don't mind, so they can
Yeah, so
contact you.
yeah, we're on Instagram. It's just my name, Sean Riggins, ShawnRiggans. Our company's Kings of Catching. We're located here in Weston, Florida. We're also on Facebook and on YouTube with more stuff to come. We're trying to get more content out to everybody here as
Appreciate
much
that.
as we can. We're gonna start pushing on that YouTube a little bit more. But I'm more than happy to help out anybody. We're a local company. You know, we deal with boys and girls of all ages and
Mm,
skill sets. You know, reach out to me. We'd love to have anybody come by, take a look at the facility, and help you out.
I appreciate that. Thanks, Sean. Episode 124, and the last question I'm gonna ask for the listeners, and I want to say thank you, Sean, again before I close it out. Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. We finally got it done. You've done an
No problem. Thanks for having me.
excellent job. Excellent job. I know people are going to say, can you get him back on? He didn't go very long. Maybe we get him back on in a future day. But the question
Of
is,
course,
I
love
asked
to.
I ask everybody, where are you being led? Where are you going? Basically, where are you going? What direction are you going? You're going north, south, east, or west? So this is the question. Where are you being led? L stands for listen. Listen to everything Sean Riggins has just told you today. Listen. Listen, you got
Mhm.
2 ears and one mouth. God gave us 2 ears, so use them. And faith comes by hearing and hearing
Yes,
the word. E stands for execute. Execute everything you heard today. Because a lot of times we hear things, but we don't execute on what we heard. The last letter is D. D stands for dominate. Listen, execute, and dominate. I believe God's given everyone a gift in this world to dominate in some field or capacity in life. Listen, execute, and dominate. This is Coach Larry. Hey, have a great life. Appreciate it, brother. Go get it.